Hey, Herd fans, happy afternoon. We are here to do our leadership luncheon, if you want to call it. So hopefully you have your personalized lunch or you brought carry out. We are talking leadership with Dave Dean, our GM, and our head coach, Chase Buford. So I will let them introduce themselves, starting with Dave.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Dave Dean, General Manager of the Herd and Vice President of Basketball Ops for the Bucks. Just super grateful to be on this call with all of you, and just want to first thank each and every one of you for your support. The reason we're able to do what we do is because of you guys, season ticket holders, corporate sponsors, etc. The support we have night in and night out in Menominee Nation and Oshkosh is unbelievable. And just super grateful for all of you, and thanks for taking time to be on the call with us.
Hey, Herd Nation, how's it going? It's Coach Chase Buford here. Just like Dave said, thank you so much for great support all year long. It's great to be able to reconnect with some of you guys in some way. Again, it was a great year. We were having a great time as it was going, and obviously this comes at a tough time, but we couldn't be more appreciative of everything you gave us this year. And we all had a great time in Menominee Nation every night, like Dave said, and it's all due to y'all support.
So we are here to talk about leadership. So what better question to start with for Dave and Chase? What is great leadership to each of you? And we'll start with Dave.
Thanks, Tyra. I think great leadership to me is when you can look to a person or people and know that you can follow them, especially during tough times. I think it's easier to lead when things are great, but what about when they get tough? And can you look to that individual or group and know that they want what's best for you and for the organization? So when you have that, see that, I think it genuinely makes you want to work as hard as possible to support that leader. And we're super fortunate in Milwaukee and Oshkosh to have some great leadership to follow.
Yeah, to echo Dave's points, I think leadership to me is about empowering the people that you're working with and working for, whether it's for us players or our staff. How as a leader do you put them in the best position to succeed for themselves, and which in turn will make your team, your organization better. And so, really empowering those people and building the trust to have them respect and follow you is, I think, the examples of great leadership.
Tyra, you're muted.
Tyra, you're muted.
I knew I was going to miss something. The nice thing about both of these gentlemen, Dave and Chase, is their experience prior to the current roles. So it took time to become the GM or to become the coach. What did leadership look like as you evolved in each of your roles, and how did those experiences help you grow to where you are now?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it's something that I've had to grow into. I started with the Bucks. I'm fortunate enough at about 23 years old, so about 20 years ago, and I really knew nothing about nothing. But over the last 20 years, I've learned from some unbelievable people and leaders that all had super different styles. And there are certain leadership traits that fit me and made sense to me. And I don't think you can lead with traits that don't fit who you truly are. If it's rehearsed, it's disingenuous. People see right through that. I think leadership is innate, and you either have the ability or you don't. And I mean, I think it might be dormant at times because of what your role is at the current time, and you can grow into a leader. But leadership, I think, has, in basketball, we talk about feel a lot. And I think leadership has a ton to do with feel, and it's something that you kind of evolve and develop into. And, in working with Chase, I can speak about him directly. He's got unbelievable feel, and I think that's what makes him a really good leader.
Yeah, for me, I think leadership is something that's always come very naturally, and I don't even think I consider leadership necessarily, but my personality is very outgoing, very boisterous, and very kind of looking to take charge. So, I remember as a 4-year-old kid at a UT basketball camp, I had my team running baseline out of bounds plays in the hallway, getting ready for a game, and that's just kind of always who I've been. Really competitive, and when you're competitive and you're wanting to win in the right ways, I think that's just natural leadership kind of evolves, and it doesn't have to be one person on a team or an organization. It can be multiple leaders, and when you have people working for the right things, it goes all together, and that's the way I've always tried to lead in my leadership style, is working together as competitors and all in the right direction. Tyra, you're muted again.
I'm going to get this right, sorry. Coach, you talked about the ability to be a natural leader and working together. What does that look like in terms of motivating your team, your assistants who you have to work with, and motivate them to have chemistry, right? And then motivate the guys to play into the culture. So what does that look like for you in being with the assistants?
Yeah, going back to my earlier point, I think it's all about empowering the people you work with. I think we had a really great group of assistants this year, and not only the assistants, our video coordinator, our player development staff, our medical, our strength staff. It was all great people who were good at their jobs and all, like I said, working towards the same goal. And so giving them more responsibility, more empowerment to do their jobs the way they see, all in the guidance of what we want to do. But the more you give rope, you give them, the more you empower them to coach players, to lead and do those things. I think the more they want to work, the more they want to buy in. And I think we saw that a lot this year. Our assistants and our staff really drove the show. I got to sit back and watch a lot of times as they worked out players and did all the things on their own, because they grew and they did such a good job. And the more they got, the more they craved for more.
So Chase, this being your first head coach job, you had experience being in the assistant role. How did those roles prepare you for where you are today and help mold the leadership skills that you have that have given you success thus far?
Yeah, the G League's been a really great opportunity for me to really grow my voice and grow my, skills as a coach by allowing you to do everything. As an assistant, you get to be involved in the tactical side and the planning of the game, the scouts, working with players, all at a really intimate level, and that's helped a lot. But I think the biggest thing for me is I got to work under two great young head coaches. One, Josh Longstaff, who's currently on the staff with the Milwaukee Bucks. Josh, I just admired the way he ran his program. We were so diligent and together, and he really exuded a lot of leadership qualities that I admired and tried to keep and stick with, as well as the way he set up his program. Just the diligentness, everything was so on point. It was really exuded class, and it responded to players, and the players responded to it. And then Connor Johnson, who's currently with the Delaware Bluecoats, he's a really young, innovative coach, and always forced us to think outside the box. I think I took a lot of that innovative mentality from him, and a lot what I learned from Josh. And I saw a blueprint of how I think a really good G League program could be run. And I think we did a lot of those things this year, and focusing in first on development, which is the most important thing in the G League. And then when you're around the G League for a couple of years, you recognize that if you're not developing players, wins and losses don't really matter. So we focused on that, and we really bought into playing a unique style, and our players responded, and it was fun to watch it grow throughout the year.
Dave, a very similar question to you. Although your background is coming from the Bucks, you still have a ton of years in the NBA. What did that experience look like? How did that mold you for now being the GM of a G League team?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Like, everything I've learned about being a professional is because of my last 20 years with the team. As I mentioned, I think some of you may or may not know kind of my backstory. I started as an intern in PR 20 years ago, and just kind of slowly but surely worked my way up and worked for 4 different general managers, and I worked with 10 head coaches. And I've seen some things throughout the years that I would absolutely do and use if I ever had an opportunity to lead. And there's some things I would never imagine or consider doing. And you take both of those, right? You take the good and the bad, and you learn from everybody you work with, and you use those things in one way or another. And then the past 3 years for sure, and then the 7 prior to that have been amazing for me. John Horst, our general manager in Milwaukee, who I'm sure you all know, has really allowed me to grow and learn in ways that I've never been able to. And quite honestly, 10 years ago, I wouldn't known that I'd have an opportunity to do. And, you know, when you have that confidence from your boss and the autonomy to do your job and try to do your job in the right way, even though you're going to make mistakes, but know that you're going to have support from the top, you do the job to the best of your ability, and there's no telling where it can take you. But I've followed some great leaders, and we currently have a bunch of great leaders in Milwaukee, and I continue to learn from those guys every single day.
Dave, you really hit on the next question. How did or who did either of you, Chase or Dave, who were you taking notes from throughout your process? And they were taking that mentorship role to help mold you and give you the success that you have today.
Sure. You know, like I just mentioned, John for sure. I spent so much time with him. We've been together for a long, long time. He knows me, you know, very, very well. I know him very well. But it's been amazing. You know, we really started off as cohorts, kind of working side by side for, you know, next to each other, 15 feet away from each other for so many years. We got to know each other so well. And just to see his growth and the amazing steps he's taken over the last, you know, 3 years has been really unbelievable. And he does things at such a high level right now. So I just try to watch and learn from him and everything he's doing every way. I'll just sit back and observe and listen to phone calls and things like that. And the way he does things, his processes are at such a high level. And I try to take those things. And then Milt Newton, our assistant general manager, he's got a very different style from John. But he does some unbelievable things, and I use him as a constant resource. I'm trying to develop myself as a leader. He's got an unbelievable way about him, and I lean on him and talk to him quite a bit. Peter Fagan, you know, quite frankly, and I hope Peter's on here. I hate to say anything good about him, but he truly is one of the best leaders I've ever seen in any setting. And especially now, like with everything kind of, you know, we're all going through together and collectively, he's really an amazing leader. And that's what you look for, somebody when times aren't going exactly right, like somebody you can look at and lead you in the right way. And Peter's done an unbelievable job for all of us with that. And then it's great. Coach Bud is like completely different from all of them. And I've taken things from him, like he connects with people, motivates individuals in ways I've never seen before until he got here. And I'll just kind of sit back and watch how he works. And, you know, I'm, of course, biased to the leadership we currently have, but it's at an all-time high in Milwaukee, and it's exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah, you know, I think growing up around the NBA, I've been blessed and fortunate enough to be around a lot of great leaders. And going to Kansas, I got to spend 4 years with Coach Self and seeing what, like Dave said, what a great man manager Bud is. I mean, Coach Self does it as well as anyone I think ever has. And their continued success, I think, speaks to that. But, you know, going back, Josh Longstaff, again, has been a huge part of my development as a coach the last 3 years, giving me a lot of responsibility as an assistant a couple years ago when we were in the G League together, and then helping me get here. I don't think I'd be in the position I am without Josh, you know, beating the drum for me a little bit. And he's just been someone I've been able to bounce ideas off of. He's a great basketball mind. He works really hard. He's diligent in his process. And I've taken a lot from the way he works and the way he carries himself and tried to implement that in my coaching and leadership styles.
What I've noticed in my 8 seasons of being in the basketball world, whether with the Milwaukee Bucks or the Wisconsin Herd, is there are things constantly changing. You can't really predict or plan a day, let alone a month, a year. You can just try to gauge from experience. What are, and this is for both Coach and Dave, one of the biggest decisions you've had to make for yourself, and how did that play out for you?
It's a really good question. I don't know about decisions for myself, but I'll kind of use it in the aspect of decisions for others that I worked really, really closely with. And I think some of those decisions came during like some of our tougher times, like even just thinking back to last season a little bit, some of the challenges we faced, for a bunch of different reasons. But, kind of, looking in the mirror every day at myself first and trying to figure out like what I could be doing better. Really for the organization overall, the people that worked with me and for me, and I'm just challenging myself to try to figure out how we can all be better together. I don't think there's anything in particular, like a big decision I've made for myself from a leadership standpoint, but understanding that how to lead in different situations. And I think for myself, growing as a leader, I've never had more growth as a leader than I did last season with the Herd and some of just the challenges we were facing on a daily basis. And I remember driving home after one of our games. I was pretty beat down and feeling so sorry for myself. It was ridiculous. And I called my wife and I was talking to her on the way home, and I just said like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And someday I'm going to look back on this as one of the best learning moments of my life. And that's been 100% true. So I've been able to take some of those challenges at the times, even when things were not going great, and it's made me a better leader, which in turn has allowed me to do my job much better, having gone through that tough experience.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the biggest thing maybe I've done in terms of a tough decision that I think has helped me is probably coming to the G League. I'd been in the NBA video room, worked as a player development assistant a little bit, and that's obviously a lot more plush life, so to speak, than coming to some of the G League cities and hotels and making that grind. But the last 3 years have been an invaluable experience, and the growth I've had as a coach in the last 3 years has superseded, I think, probably anything I could have done elsewhere. And so for me, at the time, maybe it didn't seem like the most appealing decision, but looking back, it's the best thing I could have done in my personal development as a coach to come in the G League and really spread my wings.
One thing that I found to be true, just observing, because I'm nowhere near a coach and I am not touching a court in any basketball form, there is no leader without a team. So what are some of the benefits of effective and efficient teamwork when it comes to the business side, Dave, of picking a draft, or not even just a draft, selecting a player in a draft, but selecting your team that's on the court and that coaches, and then Chase when it's teamwork and you're building your assistant staff and you're helping mold them? What does that look like?
I think the biggest benefit of having efficient teamwork is that you get to the common goal, right? You get to whatever that goal you're trying to accomplish, whether it's winning basketball games or making sure we're drafting the right players or signing the right guys or whatever it is. I think you put a goal on the table and you all know what that goal is, and you bring your group together and you figure so you start with the goal. Here's where we want to get to. How do we get there? And in some ways you can kind of work backwards from that. But I think you can't do any of that without a great process. And that's one thing that John has driven home with me is process. And the reason that it's good, you're not always going to get the right answer. You're not always going to get the right result. But if you have a good process in place that you feel good about, and that you've put everything you possibly can into that process, and you followed all the steps, and the process has worked, and you follow all the steps, and even if you don't get the exact result you want, you felt good about the process. And I think that's such a huge thing in building a team, is making sure everybody understands the process and then understands what their roles are within that process.
Yeah, no, to Dave's point, I think process is such a huge part of, not only the way we work, but the way we play, we're very specific, driven in our rules. We are more dedicated to a simplistic style of basketball than most teams. It might seem different from the outside, but it's, especially defensively, we're truly very process driven, and we do the same things every time. And it's, holding those guys accountable and having your staff, like they've said, knowing the process and knowing what you want on a daily basis, and coaching all the same way. It makes it really easy. And when you when you have a great process in place and everyone's on the same page, you can stick to that. And when you have a process too, you can know the results you're looking to get, and you can measure those results, and you can measure what you're looking for because you're working on those things. And I think just keeping that process diligent and not saying, oh, we're here. No, this is what we want to be good at, and this is the process we're doing to follow that. And maybe we're not worried about this stat or this result over here, but worried about what we're doing in this lane here. And I think something Bud teaches really, really well is eliminating kind of the fluff, the BS, if you want to call it, and focusing on what's important and sticking to your process no matter what. And I think, obviously you make adjustments as a coach and a team and those type of things, but as your consistency as a team is only going to be as good as your processes are. And I think the Bucks have great ones, and we try to implement the same things in Oshkosh.
Coach, you've talked about consistency and the process in which you all have put in the thread of the culture. What happens when conflict builds? And we've heard a little bit from Dave when he talked about decision-making and conflicts and having to transition things last season. What does that look like with the team when you are playing games every other night and you're trying to keep the chemistry alive and you have your process, but sometimes bad seeds could be planted and things could change? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think the G League is a probably unique setting for that in terms of, assignment players and all sorts of things that you talked about. You're playing as a player in the G League, and all of a sudden an NBA player comes down and he takes the bulk of your minutes. That creates a conflict. We had a really deep, talented team this year. I think they all felt they could have been playing 30 minutes a game, and on a lot of teams they probably could have. We had a lot of guys start different games and play different roles. And Leon's a great example. Sometimes he started and sometimes he didn't play, but keeping faith for the guys, letting them know that you're invested in their development and having them trust you and respect you and know that they might not like you in the moment or they might not, agree with the decision, but if they know you care about them and they know that you are invested in them and each as individuals as much as the team, it makes it easier for them to respect your decision at the end of the day. And so when you have those conflicts brew, if you have the respect of the people that you work with, and again, they might not always like you, but if they trust that you care about them and they trust that you are looking out for their best interest as well as the groups, I think it's easier to manage those conflict situations. I think conflicts become exacerbated when people are distrustful of your motives or distrustful of your thoughts, and it's not always going to be pretty, especially in the G League. But if you have the trust and respect of the group, then it makes those crisis moments or those conflict moments a lot easier.
And during my time working with Coach, I feel like the team trusts you. I mean, it's so fun to watch you guys at practice and just see the chemistry. Chase, being with the team, this is your first season. What do you love most about your job?
Yeah, probably the players. And a staff. But Dave did an unbelievable job along with his group of assembling a really high character group of individuals. They appreciated work, and they knew where they were at in their basketball journey, and so they bought into coming in and working on their game, and there was a bond that got built amongst the team through the collective work and sweat equity. They all cared for each other and they all wanted to see each other succeed. And for me, coming into that environment every day and being a part of that was something that was really, really special. And I'm sad that it ended the year, not ended, but it stopped the way it has. And, I miss that every day because it was a great group of guys to be around, and girls.
Don't forget about the women, Chase. Dave, so same question for you, a little bit different because you wear a few different hats, with the Milwaukee Bucks and then with the Wisconsin Herd. But what is your maybe one or two favorite aspects of your job?
Yeah, I totally agree with Chase. I think the first thing is just being part of a team. Like, I'm not good enough. I've never been good enough to play at a level that these guys have and are. So the next best thing to playing is just trying to be a part of it somehow, and to be a part of a team, like a real team, two teams, I guess, is an unbelievable feeling. That there's very few jobs in the world that give you the highs and lows that our jobs do, and it's as crazy as it sounds. It's sometimes like the lows, like you don't enjoy them, but like it brings life out in you. It's like it's something. It's really hard to explain. And I got to be better. I know, like I die on every possession. Like I'm losing my mind during games. And Peter Herman and Artie Culver and these guys will tell you, like I'm losing my mind, and I got to be so much better with that. But it's because we care so much, and I know Chase is passionate. We know he's passionate. So it's to be a part of something like that is so rare. There's not many jobs in the world where you can have those type of emotions every day that you go into the office. Like, so, and to Chase's point, just being a part of the team, like going in that locker room and getting with all the guys after a great win, it's just a special feeling that if you've never done it, it's super hard to explain what that does to you. So it's like it's an unbelievable thing to just be a part of a team and be working with great people and great individuals on a daily basis. It's such a blessing.
I can definitely echo that. Just interviewing the guys, there were so many career highs this season, and their excitement and the team's excitement for their teammates, that is an energy to be around. And I'm not touching the court, but I feel every possession as well. So as we transition a little bit, we have time with our lives, right? We're in the sports industry. We have our nights back, not having games, unfortunately. What are some of the books that you've either read in this time or in the past where you would suggest some of the fans listening to read?
Right now, I'm reading a book called Adams versus Jefferson. And I think this was kind of inspired. It's pretty dry so far, but we'll see. It's been inspired. My kids are so into Hamilton right now. Like, I know they're like a couple years late, but they absolutely love it. And all they listen to is the soundtrack. So they've gotten really into history, which has been kind of cool to come out of that. So I started reading this book, and it's a pretty slow read right now, but something that is totally outside of my wheelhouse and something I would usually never take time to try to read. So I'm doing that. Books on leadership, there's a bunch of good ones. Angela Duckworth has a book called Grit that, I've taken some things from. And then General Martin Dempsey has a book. It's called No Time for Spectators. I think it's what it's called. It's out right now. I have not read it. But that will be a fun one for me to read because I think he's one of the best leaders I've ever seen and ever been around. And we've been fortunate. The Bucks organization has been fortunate to get to know him over the last year or so. And I spent some time with him in Paris, and we had a couple glasses of wine together. And it was just amazing to talk to somebody, a leader like at that level. Is like unbelievable that he's got a book out, and I can't wait to dive into that one. That's going to be great.
Yeah, I've come home to San Antonio to quarantine with my parents, and my dad's given me a stack of books already. I have yet to break into. I need to get in to doing some more reading. But Grit, like Dave said, is an unbelievable book that has a lot of different usages in terms of, there's a big part on parenting for grit and how to raise your kids to be gritty and growing grit within yourself. And it's a really interesting read in terms of just the power of determination and willpower can just override talent or anything else. And it's a very interesting read. The other one I think is really been great for me in my coaching and leadership development is a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Hugh. I butchered his name, I forget, but it's a really interesting dive into the way we build habits as humans. And, especially if you're trying to rid a bad habit, smoking or, eating or whatever it is. It's an interesting dive into the human psyche and how you need to replace your habits and things like that. And as a coach, we talk about habits a lot as a team, building the right habits. We are really just a sum of our habits as a collective. So it's an interesting book talking about building good habits. And if it's something that interests you, I definitely recommend reading it.
So before we start taking questions from fans, one last question to Dave and Coach. What is one of your favorite leadership quotes that you hold close to?
I think one is like super simple. It's just lead and own it. I think if you try to lead and then if you make mistakes, you own up to it. I think that's a huge one. Is part of being a leader is admitting when you may have made a mistake or you're not always right. And I think that's a huge part of leadership. So lead and own it. It's a simple one, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Then the other one is confidence is preparation. Everything else is beyond your control. When you're prepared, you stay relatively confident in everything that you need to do. Like where they say, like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. It's kind of like that. So you just stay prepared, and that's all you can do is be prepared. And there's so much, especially now and what we're all going through, that's out of your control, but you stay as prepared as possible. And I kind of use those two a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. One thing I had our assistants do, something I stole from Josh Longstaff, is have a quote for every game. And it was every time if there was their scout, they would have to present the quote for, at the beginning of the scout that night. And I think they did a great job of trying to find quotes that are relevant in the moment, whether it's coming off a hard loss or whatever it is. And I think they did a fantastic job. But going back to habit, I think my favorite quote is, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellent then is not an act, but a habit. And it's Aristotle, I think. But that was something we kind of held to this year. Is just, being great or anything is not just an act. It's not a one-time thing. It's daily, daily, daily. And, being a leader, it's serving others too. And, you have to come in there and buy in that work every day. And I think that was something that we all, to a man, had this year. It was really fun.
I hope Steve is watching so we can implement the quote of the week for our meetings. So we'll take our first fan question. It's from Gerard. When do you typically start planning or working on next season? So I will start with Dave, and then Coach, you can go next.
Yeah, it's under normal circumstances, I think you kind of play your season out. You take maybe just a little bit of time to regroup because everybody needs to, recharge the battery a little bit. But it's interesting. I think Chase would agree with this. It's something that you're kind of always talking about and preparing for the next year. You're enjoying your time while you're in your current situation, but you're also thinking forward. And I think that's what we have to do. So honestly, like right now, there's so much unknown. And again, this goes back to kind of what I talked about earlier, just about preparation. We're preparing either to resume this season, or if not, like we're already preparing for next year. And what does that look like? So, we're watching, like for example, in Milwaukee, like we're watching all this video on all these draft guys, and we're preparing for free agency. And then the good part about that for me in particular is by watching all these draft guys and knowing what the free agent landscape is going to look like, it trickles down to the herd level where we know which guys could potentially be available. So Peter Herman and Artie Culver, myself, those two guys in particular are watching like tons and tons of film every single day on guys that we would call like pick 61 guys, right? Like guys that may be second rounders, might not be drafted. What guys in that group can we focus on to try to have with the herd next year? Also, like Chase talks to our players often, I do as well, try to get a gauge for like which guys might want to come back next year. These guys are going to, Chase did such a great job, the staff did such a great job with developing these guys. They're going to have opportunities like around the globe. They'll have opportunities, and we have to talk through that. What does that look like? Who might come back? And I think there's a little pause, a little recharge of the battery, but you start thinking about the next season relatively quickly.
Yeah, like Dave said, I mean, there's things we talk about during the year. Hey, maybe it's too late for this year, but let's think about this for next year. Things we can do better, things we can do differently. And so it's kind of an ongoing process. When you finish the season, the draft is pretty much, like Dave said, coming right up. So you're already watching film and bleeds right into summer league, which almost carries you into training camp and those type of things, or international tournaments. So there are little pauses in there, but you're really, it's a 365 deal where you're just always trying to kind of be a little bit better and think a little bit forward ahead and prepare yourself for whatever comes next.
The next question is from Shannon, and this is for Dave. And this is, I feel, a really important question. How do you change the culture? And I think that's so important because when the Wisconsin Herd started, the culture was different for the Bucks. And then as Wisconsin Herd in the third year, the culture has changed and grown in the most positive way. What did that shift look like?
Yeah, culture, that's a really good question and a hard question because it's not an easy thing to change. I think what you need to do is kind of like what I talked about earlier is you kind of have to go through some hard times and some bumps in the road to realize what works and what doesn't. And you evolve a little bit as a leader when you see what those things are, like when they're working and not working. Like, how can you make the adjustment for the things that aren't working? And you may have had this vision of like, this is exactly what it's going to look like. And then as those things kind of don't come together and there's like little cracks in the foundation, you need to figure out ways to fix those things. So we made, like the Herd being an example, this last off season, there were some things we knew that we needed to address, and we addressed those things. And I think putting your heads together with other great leaders and other great thinkers within the organization helps with that. And that's why Chase has been such a great partner and great addition for our organization. And that, we sat down and talked last July in Vegas and started talking about the way he viewed things, the way I viewed things. They were very much in line, but I also knew that he had the ability to execute many of those things. And, one thing that's been just tremendous about having Chase and his staff is that from a front office standpoint, I don't worry about the stuff on the court at all because I know he's got it and I know it's on cruise control. And that's a huge thing is to know that your partner in crime, so to speak, kind of just has that part of it. And hopefully he thinks like I kind of have this part of it. And then we come together, right? And then we come together and we make decisions. And then we kind of go from there. But that's been a huge change is Chase's, his relationship with our guys was at such a good level. The culture starts from the top on the basketball side with Chase and the coaching side, and then it starts with me, and we kind of come together, and then hopefully it trickles down to everybody else. It's a great question because it's a really hard thing to change, and it takes a lot of time. It takes, I would say honestly 3 to 5 years to truly change culture and process and get it to a place you really want it to be.
So Dave really led into my next question because this is a crucial piece and I see the success of it. Coach, how do you build relationships with the players? Whole new roster, a new city for you. What did that process look like?
I think it started right when I got to Milwaukee, getting the opportunity to come and work with Cam and Frank and Luke and Jalen, Rajon every night. Those guys were hard workers and they came in the gym and I relished the opportunity to go in there every night and work with them. And a lot of times it was just me and them and just that daily, again, investment in them, letting them know, hey, I'm here for you and I'm willing to work whenever you want to work. And I think that builds the trust that you're invested in their success and their development as people and players. And on top of that, you just get a familiarity. You get to touch them. I mean, I think physical contact is a huge part of building trust and relationships. And whether it's, putting your arms on a guy's shoulders or something, just the physical contact and being around each other, it builds relationships. And so getting a head start on that with those guys, I was very fortunate enough to do that, to be around Bucks training camp, again, to continue those relationships was really invaluable to start the year on such a good foot where half your roster already feels pretty comfortable with you and you build up some of that trust and equity with them. And then once you get the rest of the group, it's just showing those same things, showing you're willing to work, showing that you're on top and that you're prepared and what you want to do. And it's not built overnight, so it takes time, and you know, it's a constant process. It's not like you get to a place and now you're good. You have to continue to work on those relationships. You can't just let them, you know, it's like a garden. It takes watering, it takes effort. So I think just the constant investment in the players, and not only them as players, but as people, learning about their families and what they have and what motivates them outside of basketball, I think is a huge part.
You talked about trust and starting with the Milwaukee Bucks and being able to ease your way in basically into the culture and then therefore having the full team. So Dennis, from small quantity boxes, the follow-up to that, what do you say to a two-way player when he's moved down to the herd? And I think a good example of that would be a Frank Mason who was familiar with the NBA and now is transitioning into a different position. What does that conversation look like? Mute. You're on mute, Coach.
Sorry. Luckily for me, Frank and Cam were such mature individuals that it was easy in those moments. I think, you know, we try to be cautious of how we phrase it. You know, we try not to use words like going down or things like that. We don't want it to seem like a demotion. You know, it's an opportunity for them to come work on their game. You know, I think Dragan's probably a great example. DJ a little bit later in the year, but, you know, early in the year we saw Dragan a lot, and he embraced the opportunity to get better. And I think he enjoyed the camaraderie that our team had and bought into that, which made it nice. But Frank and Cam are the same way. You know, they get some opportunities to go up with the Bucks and play in practice and show what they could do. But when they come back down here, I think you saw it from Frank, especially late in the year. He really embraced the opportunity to get better and show what he can do. And he really just became a monster on the floor. So I think part of it goes back to building the relationships and, you know, having them be someone you trust. And when they come back with you, they're like, all right, you know, it's time to work and time to get better. And when they get their chance to go show what they can do with the Bucks, they're always going to be excited. So it's just about creating that environment that they're excited to be in, excited to work, and an environment they know they're going to get better in, so they don't view as a demotion or anything like that.
One thing you talked about, Coach, is the maturity. And I remember during drafts, the constant conversation of like their character and having good character guys. And so we have a question from the fans. When scouting players to draft or to bring to the herd, where do you look at the raw talent and coachable? Like, how do you rank that? And so that is for both Chase and Dave. And I'll start with Dave.
Yeah, I mean, you really try to look at everything, right? You try to look at the talent. Obviously, you're not going to take a guy who can't play, and then you have to look at the background and the intel and the upside and all these things, right? So it's just like many conversations that we have throughout the entire process, the day that we really start working on the draft to the day we make the picks. And I think something that we do really well is we involve everybody. Chase and his entire staff they're crushing draft film. They do such a good job with it. And then like Artie and Peter and a couple of other guys on our staff also do the same thing. And then we're all in a room together and we're talking about all these guys. You know, you start with a huge list of, 1,000 guys, and then you get down to a list that we really want to talk about. And then we all get together and we beat them up. And, you know, it's not conflict. It's just healthy dialogue. Like I might see things one way, and Artie might see things another way, and Chase might see things another way, and the exact same guy. And that's why you sit down and you talk through it. And it's how you get good results, hopefully. And I feel like we did a pretty good job in this draft at our first together. And, you know, just like working together and communicating and working as a group is like the most important thing in all of it. And Tyra, one other thing I wanted to say, just off of what Chase talked about earlier with our two-way guys, is a huge part of the process with them and the transition to the herd or back to Milwaukee is Chase and I, we've sat down with those guys way at the beginning of the year, and they have a plan from the get-go that Chase puts together from a player development standpoint. We have stuff off the court stuff. We have goals for these guys. So way back in like October, call it, they knew that they would be spending a considerable amount of time in Oshkosh. So if and when those things kind of happen, there was very little surprise there, and they knew it was all part of their development and for them to get better. And I think you could, to Chase's point earlier, you could see it in a guy like Dragan. And then like Frank, shoot, the second half of the year was just, on another level. So they do know that's communicated with very early, so there aren't really many surprises with that.
Yeah, to go into building the team and the high character guys we had this year, I think, again, Dave and his group, along with, the coaches a little bit, but they targeted Luke May, someone early that could really help grow the environment of our team. And I think Luke exceeded tenfold on that. He was a real centerpiece of the culture we had in terms of the work ethic of our group. And I think guys fed off his energy. And, in some degrees, you get lucky. And like a guy like Leon Gilmore, who was an open tryout guy, and we saw his passion and raw defensive ability show in the workout is what we gave him a chance, invite him to camp. He was such a huge integral part of our culture by the end of the season. He brought the music everywhere we go, and it seems like a silly thing, but it creates a vibe, and Leon definitely did that throughout times. Jamario Jones, a guy we really, really were excited about his talent as a basketball player. We got late in the process because of some contractual deals with his NBA clubs, and Jamario, you guys that are around him can see what an infectious personality is, and is good. You hope that somebody's a great person, but you have no idea that they can be that impactful for your team. So I think it's a mix of targeting some great people and getting a good group, and then creating an environment where you're going to get people who maybe would go either way. They're going to rise to the level of the other guys around them. And I think we had that in spades this year, where everyone just rose to the level of all of our high quality and high character dudes, because they really didn't have an option. Everyone wanted to work. Everyone wanted to be so about the team that if you were in any way not involved in that, it stuck out so bad that, the guys would probably gang up against you. So it's a mix of a lot of things, but I think targeting people who are really, really high character, because it's hard to find really, really quality people, really helped the program overall.
Overall, this has just been an exciting season in the last 3 years that I've been with the team. And just going back and rewinding, if you're not following us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, please do. We've gone through the decades and rewind to some of our theme nights. It was so exciting to see like some of the highs and lows of the season just through different perspectives. So this is for Dave and Chase. What were some of your favorite moments that just remind you of why this job is so much fun and so exciting, and you love coming to work with us every day?
Yeah, there were a lot of fun ones this year. I think earlier in the year we had a big game at Maine that we won, and it was really a tough game and back and forth. And I'm walking off the court when the game was kind of in our favor. And Jalen Adams is runs over to the bench, and I'm like behind the scorer's table, and I won't even say what he said, but he like reaches over and like slaps my hand, and we run into the locker room together, and like I'm like getting goosebumps right now. This is crazy. This is a game like whatever 7 of the year, whatever it was. Like that's what you live for. Like that's what makes being a part of a team like so special. Like moments like that with your guys, when you see that kind of success, it's just, I don't know, it's just the best. Like, so that one early in the year stands out. Chase's first win at Windy City was an awesome moment. That was super, super special. And then clinching, being the first team in the league to clinch a playoff spot. And, those 3 kind of stand out as some pretty cool moments for us.
I think one of my favorite moments, it was kind of a up and down, was the showcase. People probably don't know this. I was sick as a dog for the whole thing. I had a really bad flu. Hopefully it wasn't coronavirus, but who knows? Anyways, the first game I could barely stand up. I was sweating the whole time, and we probably played our worst game of the year, and I was a prick to the officials and everybody else, and somehow we fought back and took it to overtime and almost gave ourselves a chance to win. I think it was kind of the quality and character of this group. We always fought back and gave ourselves a chance. We didn't end up winning that one. Frank goes back. I think we were out jogging. We were without some guys, and we go play Memphis, who everyone thought was the best team in the league at the time. And we put Leon Gilmore on Josh Jackson, who's been terrific all year. It started Leon his first start, and or maybe a second, I don't know, and just kicked Memphis's butt down the stretch, and it was fun because it was like the core of our G League group really showed up and played well. I think DJ, Cam, we had a lot of performance in that game, so that was one that was you go to the showcase hoping your guys would win the $100,000, but we had a break bread dinner after the last game, and it almost felt like we'd won more because the group was still excited to be together, and it wasn't we were just playing for that, and that was a fun moment. The first main game, like Dave said, was fun. The second one, I think, when Trevor Lacey went nuts down the stretch, and they played taco, and we put Luke May on taco, and really played our style versus theirs, and took it to them. That was a fun moment too. So I would say those, all those moments really stand out, but those were two fun ones for me.
So during this time from working from home, I've realized how hard it is for me to turn it off. Normally we're in the office and I come home and my kids are the distraction for me to realize, okay, be present. For Dave and Coach, have you realized, or has it been hard for you to turn it off as far as watching games, watching players, or is it something that constantly is a part of your lifestyle?
Yeah, it's Coach said earlier 365. It really is. It's 365, and it's the best job in the world, and it's why it doesn't feel like a grind or like a tough thing to be able to muster up the energy to do. But it really is. It's all the time, and I think part of it is we're all competitors. And Chase said earlier, you want to be a little bit better every year, and we want to be a little bit better every day as individuals. And I think you always feel like if you're not if you're not working, you're falling behind, and you're falling behind somebody else and our competitors. And it is an all the time thing. Tyra, I totally hear what you're saying. Like there is like a thing where you're at the office and then you can come home. At least you have like a little bit of a transition to kind of shut it off. And you're right now, so I'm in my office at home and then I walk to the kitchen and there's like very little like downtime there, right? So it can be all the time. But again, good leadership tells you this, and what Peter and John have told us is like you can get worn out by being at home, and it sounds pretty crazy, but there's people that are burned out from Zoom and all these things, and they're real things. So I think you just need to be very methodical in the day. At least I am with the way I plan my day out, and I build in like a time to go work out for an hour or whatever it is. And if you build those things in, I think you can keep your balance.
I'll be honest, Dave's probably been a lot better during this than I have. I've had my moments of struggle where again, planning your day is something that is so natural when you're working and have all these things coming. And now when there's not, especially for us, a ton of deadlines because everything's so up in the air, it's been hard for me at times to struggle to find the motivation. But just started working out a little bit, which has helped a lot. Kind of start the day with a little bit of an achievement and then get more done. But I understand the struggles people are going through because it's a hard way to balance the work life home situation when you have your families, you have everything else around you. But it's the competitive spirit in you, like Dave said, drives you to want to be better and want to keep growing.
So we're getting a lot of good questions from fans watching. We'll do two more before we close it out. The first one, what makes a player a leader on the court? And that is for Chase.
A player that is 100% selfless, I think guys will follow in any moment. And, we all have our moments of confidence or selfish thoughts, but I think people in general who exude selflessness are easy to follow because that they are caring about the right things and caring about the same goals, and they don't have their own goals in mind. And it was fun because we had a number of those type of individuals this year. We had so many leaders on the floor: Jamario, Luke, Cam, Frank, Jalen. I mean, you name it. And it was all because at the end of the day, it wasn't about them, and it was about each other. And when you have guys that are like that and that are passionate and care about the right things, they're easy people to follow. And we had a ton of players like that this year.
So this would not be a leadership panel nor a basketball conversation if we didn't bring up the conversation about The Last Dance. So the question is from a fan, favorite episode of The Last Dance, or any takeaways about leadership that really stood out and you recognize? And this is for both Dave and Coach.
Oh man. So, I shouldn't admit this working for the Bucks, but when I was a kid, I was a big Bulls fan. I grew up watching Michael. It was right in my wheelhouse. Like when he entered the NBA and played USA basketball and all those things, I was about 8 to 10 years old and really starting to watch hoops and watching this guy. WGN is right down the road. Chicago's right down the road, so I could get all the games on my radio, and that's what I would do. Is I would listen to the Bulls on the radio. And so as a strong Bucks person now, it's hard for me to admit that, but I really love the Bulls and I love Michael. So my favorite episode is just probably the first one, because it was just so much about him, and all these are going to be, of course. But I mean, leadership, he's a stone cold killer. That's the only way to put it. He's one of the greatest competitors of all time, and to me, the greatest player of all time. And just, to watch every little thing he does. And I remember as a fan going to the Bradley Center, and it was like he's like in a whole other stratosphere from everybody else, and just being in awe of the aura around him. And to this day, it's the craziest thing. Like to this day, like if I see Michael Jordan, I'm like a little kid inside. Like I don't act like it, but I'm like a little kid inside. And we're in Paris this year, and he comes walking down the hallway, and he's like comes up right up to us, and he says like, "What's up, boys?" And like inside, I'm this 10-year-old kid screaming and yelling, "You're the greatest of all time. Like I love you, I love you." But on the outside, I'm just like, Michael, like that. So I mean, to me, like the episodes around him and what he's done it's just unbelievable. I can't get enough of the Last Dance. I love it.
Yeah, I think that we got to ask that same question after we see the next 6 episodes, because I feel like there's a lot more coming. Like Dave said, it's hard to grow up as a kid around basketball, not have been a Bulls fan as I was as a kid. But I think seeing Phil has been interesting to me, especially as a coach looking to other people. Like I thought it was hilarious the way Phil handled sending Dennis to Vegas in the middle of the season, and being all right with that. And I think it takes some cojones, so to speak, to make a decision like that. And again, it comes back to you have to have the respect and trust of your team to pull something like that off this year. Maybe I should have sent Jamario away at some point to go to Vegas, and he would have been greater again. I don't know. He was terrific all year. So, but I'm sure Jamario would have loved a break from me for 48 hours and turned it into 96 or whatever. But no, it's been fun to see Phil a little bit in his management style, and see the reverence, obviously, that all these guys have for him. I mean, you hear Mike talk about the way he loved Doug Collins back when he played for Doug, but then to say at the end of his career, I won't play for anybody but Phil. It's from a coaching standpoint, it's been intriguing for me.
Well, thank you, Dave, Dean, and Chase for joining us this afternoon. We enjoyed hearing from you and learning more about your backgrounds. Thank you all for taking an hour of your time to spend it with us in our homes and to learn more about the behind the scenes of the Wisconsin Herd. We hope that you guys continue to stay in tune with what we're doing. Follow us on social media, Wisconsin Herd, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until we see you next time, stay healthy and stay inside.